Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. My name is Colin Wilson, and we're doing another webinar, and today's webinar is all about handling performance management during COVID-19. So this is a very exciting webinar. I have one of my HR professionals that's going to join me. Maya Trebeska is going to join us at this webinar, and I'll introduce Maya to you very shortly. Okay, so today's webinar, what we're going to go through is the importance of performance management during this COVID-19, ways to address performance issues, even remotely, because a lot of us, especially here in Melbourne metro area, we're all working remotely, so how to do that. And we'll also talk about positive things as well. How to address staff who are underperforming or misconduct, and how to give staff an official warning. So it's really hard, especially if you've got staff working remotely. And how to prevent an unfair dismissal or an adverse action claim during this period. We've also got another webinar coming up, as you'll see, on the 14th of September. So we'd love you to join that. The link will be on the end of this webinar. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. So this webinar is being recorded. Everyone on this webinar, who's registered for this webinar, will receive a recording of the webinar as well as a copy of the slides as well. Everyone is in mute, and that's so to minimize background noise and everything like that. We will have a time to answer some questions. You can submit your questions in the question box, and at the end of this webinar, we'll start answering those questions. Okay. Before I start the webinar, one thing I do want to address is, we're in this pandemic and it's like week 3 now in this shutdown period. I know we've got people on this webinar from all over Australia, so it's not just Melbourne, but we do have a lot of people that live within the City of Moonee Valley businesses who are our clients that join this webinar. I just want to highlight that the City of Moonee Valley has been really good in putting out some communication in relation to some of their grants. And they're a big fan of key business advisors, which I think is important. And I just want to show you that if you have a look at their communication, you can see some of the latest things that's happening. But in particular, they've just released the latest updates of the state government's hospitality grant, the business support grant expansion, and needing permits, and right through to their recovery grants promotion that they're working on at the moment. So that's what's happening in the City of Moonee Valley. For other people who are on this webinar, have a look at your local council, because I'm sure they're all doing the same thing. And I think it's great that we're getting this support from the City of Moonee Valley. Okay, so our presenters, as I mentioned before, I'm the Director of Key Business Advisors, and we're a great company, been going for 12.5 years now, located in Essendon, Victoria, and I have with me Maya. Say hello, Maya.
Hello, everybody.
Beautiful. So Maya's going to go through, and performance managers is her thing, and I definitely hope you get a lot out of this webinar today. So a bit about us, we're all about, taking business from good to great. And our purpose is taking customers on a journey to help them to improve all the aspects through employee engagement and performance of their business. Now, for those who have been following us, I've been doing a lot of webinars. We did a massive run of Survive and Thrive webinars through the first and second stage of, third stage of COVID-19. One of the things I've been talking about in my most recent webinars is setting that right pathway. So how do you reduce some of the pressure, some of the KPIs on your people, and give them a clearer direction on how to trade through this pandemic that we're all in. And one of the things I've been very clear about is making sure that your staff are energized, making sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to keep them in tune with your business. And unfortunately, there is sometimes a minority of people that what's the word, are not putting in, or maybe deciding that they don't want to be there anymore. And there's been a lot of that happen, and we've had a lot of that come through to our HR professionals. So again, that's part of the reason why what we've done is we're putting a series of webinars on and trying to help businesses out there to work out what to do, to motivate their staff, but also to address people who are not performing as well. So let me go to the first topic, which is about the performance of the importance of performance management during COVID-19. And now I'm going to hand you over to Maya, who's going to take you through her slide deck. Beautiful. Over to you, Maya.
Thank you, Colin, and hello, everybody. So today's session is more about performance management and understanding what it actually is. So it is a broad concept, and it's not just about performance counselling or the disciplinary process or performance appraisals. It's from the start of their employment life cycle towards the end of their employment life cycle and everything in between. Well, what's so important about it now during COVID-19 is we want to make sure that we've got activities set by the business to meet the goals and objectives of the business. So that's similar to what Colin's mentioned in previous webinars and the pathways of the goal settings that we've got post-COVID or during COVID to get us through this. What's important is creating a work environment which people are able to perform to the best of their abilities is how we see performance management. And that means your position descriptions and having clear KPIs and targets that they need to achieve. If they're a new staff member, such as for us, we've got a new staff member and we've gone through an induction plan. So it's setting them up to succeed in your business. So whether that's a 2-week induction plan or 4 weeks and checking in with them. It's also about providing the ongoing education, training and coaching. So in order for us to succeed with having the right people on board, we also need to provide them with the time, support and coaching and mentoring. And it's also important to focus on a few of the important KPIs for each quarter. For example, we've got some in our business that Colin's put forward to us as advisors and support. It's about what is important and why it's important and focusing on those conversations. Also, it's important to talk about the career paths and progression, understanding what's going on through COVID, but there's more to working from home or working in the business, but putting a plan in place to show that you care for them. And it also then in turn creates an engaging workforce with high performing team members and they'll follow your vision and values.
I think that's important, mate. And I think what's going on right now is there's I need to make this quite clear. There are a lot of businesses out there that are in trouble and they're struggling on getting through. I want to acknowledge that. There's also some businesses out there that are going okay and getting through, and like we're one of them. And then there's some other businesses out there that are absolutely thriving at the moment. And for our business, I think we're up to, during this COVID-19 period, about 13 odd recruitments we're doing for some of our clients. So there's a lot of activity going on that's out there. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that we want to keep that momentum going and keep that positivity happening. Okay.
So it's important to talk about actually what's changed since COVID-19. So a lot of information that you'll find out there will tell you all about what to do, but I think it's important to cover exactly what we found or we've identified through communication with our clients, which also with prospective clients and people joining this webinar today. It's important to understand, we've had to learn to let go as business owners and fully trust the employees with what they're doing. So some people have staff that are working from home, which is great if you have the opportunity to do so. And for those that are there, is with the complete trust saying, understand that so-and-so is working and that they will deliver on the outcomes. It's also to be mindful, important to be mindful about people's mental health, especially the employees during this time. So a lot of situations could mean that some people are completely stood down or the business has temporarily closed because of either the government regulations or there's just not enough work. So being mindful of that mental health and just doing that check-in with the staff to understand how they're feeling, and what I like to call them as welfare checks. Even if they're not working, just being able to drop in a line and say, hi, just checking up, hope you're well. Is there anything that I can do to help you? It's important to also understand the new difficulties. We understand that for business owner, that's the common question that we've received over the last couple of weeks is how do I keep them engaged if they are working from home or even if they're working from a site, understanding the limitations, but what can we do? So for us, it's just again, making sure that we are putting in processes or making something fun and engaging with them, as well as getting them to achieve their goals and targets that they need to. The other part is about focusing on the output. So look at what the employees have achieved, or not how they achieved it. So what have they achieved throughout those processes? Did they learn a new skill? And comment on that and focus on positive reinforcements to them about what they've done to try and get to where they needed to be. It's also accepting the new flexibility to when they can work or that you want them to work. So typically in an office day, if I look at an office environment, might be from 8:30 to 5. But accepting that people have got family members or students that require school. So it's about being able to understand, okay, I might not be available at this particular time, but I know, again, I can wait until later on this afternoon because I know the work will get done. Lines of communication is very important, and especially I would strongly recommend, whether it's daily or every second day, it's really, really important to have that open lines of communication with the team. This generally makes or breaks the type of relationship that you have with your staff. It keeps the staff and members engaged and positive and on top of what you need them to do. It's also about understanding, again, with the people challenges that they have, like they might query about second round of COVID. Does it mean my job's secure? What's going to happen in the next couple of weeks? So it's really important through those open lines of communications about letting them know where the business is up to. And one of the ones that I actually love is it quite important to give them their social interaction. What a lot of people would be missing right now is the day-to-day interactions with their team and their staff mates. So it's okay that staff are having that general conversation with another staff member, because it's part of that making sure we've got positive reinforcements and positive mental health, opportunities down there. And the hardest one probably during this particular time is the micromanagement. And not that there's a lot of managers that I know that are out there that are doing it, but it's, again, it goes with my first point. If you trust your employees, there won't be that need to micromanage the staff members. And I just want to leave it on a little quote there. Keeping people engaged is very paramount, especially in what we do and especially during COVID-19.
Yeah, well done, Maya. We have a lot of staff that have got kids and stuff like that. I know that some of them are working on the weekends and late at night, and I'm not policing it or anything like that. We've got goals we want to achieve, and we know that everyone is doing their very best. And even yourself, Maya, you were working with a client up till about 8 o'clock on Friday night. So, and that doesn't go unrecognised as well. I think that's probably the big thing that is a big message when you talk about performance management. You want to recognise people that are really going above and beyond and doing what they need to do.
Absolutely. So we wanted to mention about drawbacks of remote working, because again, a bit of the clients that we've been working with to date and people listening on the webinar, if you've got staff that are working from remotely and working from home, is understanding and thank you, Colin, for acknowledging my work until 9 o'clock, but it's also able to realise, okay, certain tasks need to be done to a certain time, but it's also about learning to unplug after work. And that's a common theme that people, especially HR professionals over many industries and corporations, listening to some HR professionals over the last few weeks, they've mentioned it's very hard to separate your work-life balance. So in this instance, I strongly recommend understanding that some people, we need to learn and we need to be accepting that some things are important, but also having that work-life balance. The other part of the isolation and loneliness, for some people, they may live alone or they may only be by themselves, or partners are at work or so forth. It's that isolation and loneliness that can come across with that, being quiet, whereas as opposed to being engaged in a office setting where they've got people or friends that they can talk to, or colleagues. The other what we identified was the lack of collaboration or communication. In some businesses, we found that There was either no communication and managers hadn't spoken, or the leaders hadn't spoken to their staff for about a month, or once a week, and found again that became a part of the isolation and loneliness, but also the feel of care factor from some managers or the business. The other drawbacks is there's distractions from home. We all know that sometimes we could be either with a family member or watching a little bit of telly or making some food or washing, whatever the case may be. It's just being mindful that those distractions are mitigated or minimized as much as they can, and leave them to what I call tea breaks or lunch breaks, and still adhering to those. Some instances where time zones or availabilities are an issue. So, for example, we've got some clients that have international staff that are there, and being able to address, I guess, with them, what's a flexible working arrangement given this situation. Staying motivated, I'd say, is one of a lot of comments that we've heard over the last couple of months as well. Staying motivated in regards to whether it's the role itself or the tasks itself, but it's again, once the lines of communications are open, that will bring the motivation back up. As I mentioned, taking breaks is very important. Still treat it like you were in the office. You clock on, say at 8:30, have your work through to your tea break, and then making sure that you take a lunch break and so forth. And the other things that we've also found is some people do feel left out. I know there's a lot of Zoom or team meetings or Slack meetings and catch-ups and pings. So it's just making sure that you check in on the rest of the team members.
I think, Maya, what's important is, when we're in a live environment, we all go and get a coffee together or go to the water tank and have a bit of a chit chat and stuff like that. And when you're isolated, it's, sometimes, you don't get to do that. So I think it's important that, you reach out maybe with some of your colleagues, and, one thing I'm really passionate about is, connect with your colleagues and, have a conversation. And I know that Alice the other day, she went out for a walk, and she called me while she was going for a walk around the block. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. So I think again, we've got to try and get some of that what's the word, with the restrictions, you still got to try and keep it upbeat and make it important. And look, during this time period, I can say there's some companies out there that have done some fantastic things where they've sent their staff some food, or flowers. I sent flowers to our team last week. I put on some lunches. I think it's important that that you show your staff that you care, and they are a big part of your business. Which takes me to this next slide, which I want to talk about, because this is what I'm all about, and that is why you must set those clear expectations and set that pathway up, right? So, we've gone through the process of we need to change, we need to refocus, repivot our business. We've gone through all of that. Now it's about setting that pathway forward. So employees understand what the business needs, because if they understand what the business needs and what the direction is, they will follow it. Set the company expectations and the value so everyone is on the same page. And I believe I've done a great job with that with our team, where 5 KPIs, I've dropped them down to 3, get them more focused on the 3 KPIs. Some of them double up so they hold each other accountable, and it's just made it more interactive. And it might stay that way in the future now, because it's really working at the moment in our company. I think, to gain more clarity, so just making sure you're doing those check-ins. Are you okay? Do you understand what we want you to do? Are you happy with this? Do you see it working? Try and keep them engaged. And, those little check-ins that Maya talked about is just so important. And I think, for me, I think, as an owner and a director of a company, sometimes when my team are on hookups with their clients, I jump on as well, just, jump in there with them to say hello to the client and stuff like that, to show that we're doing the support and everything that they need. I think, we've got to improve that productivity and customer service. And again, I try my hardest on a Friday to keep the day free to do "Are you okay?" checks with our clients and my team. I want to make sure that they're going to go into the weekend having a good weekend as best as possible, because you can't leave your home at the moment. So just want to let them know that that we're here for them. Employees are happier and feel more positive if you give them that direction, that pathway, so they know what to follow. And to gain, that commitment and motivation from staff, I think, it's just magic when you see the team working together and happy. And when you run a Zoom meeting, you know, I see companies out there training companies on how to run a Zoom meeting, but we need to bring the human element in. I think this morning the guys talked about the Brady Bunch, because we've all got the Brady Bunch, and some of the old episodes. That was the warm up, of about 5 or 6 minutes before we got into the actual meeting. So I think you got to have a bit of fun. To maintain that good attendance and standards. So again, we see it out there that companies are in trouble, and we see people that are really trying hard for the company to survive. And we also unfortunately see the reverse, like, I'm not working today, I'm feeling sick, and just calling in sick and letting the company down. And they might be sick, you're entitled to be sick, but there seems to be a pattern that this person has had 3 days off before the weekend, it's just not should be there but wasn't there. I think it's important that we send that right message. And I think happy customers and clients bring good vibes to your business, because if you can deliver to the outcomes to the customers, and it is good vibes, then that needs to be generated back through the team as well, just all the good work that we're doing. And I think, why you must follow up on expectations for better performance. Well, for me, it's very, very simple. It's clearer communication on what the business expects. So as a leader, and I've said this in previous emails, as a leader, you need to stand up and you need to say, this is what the business needs to do to survive and get through. And this is the pathway to make sure we do it. And then try and reduce any sort of conflict between staff. So again, there's different personalities out there that work in the workforce, different age brackets. There's like some companies got 5 generations working in it. We're just going to make sure that we, if we keep people focused and what the game plan is, and this is what our pathway is moving forward, we want to try and minimize any conflicts. But unfortunately, they do happen, and that's what creates that angst and pressure for a business. Create a high-performing team and productivity. So if you've got them focused, I remember once when I started this business 12.5 years ago, I asked a lady who was a HR professional, how do you motivate and keep a team positive? And she said, well, it's like this, Colin. You got to imagine you've got a bunch of 10-year-olds in a classroom, and when the teacher leaves, what happens? The kids start to play up. So you've got to keep them focused all the time. It's no different in running a team. So I think, if people know what they're accountable for and what their role is, and they can hold each other accountable for it, and you give them that clear direction, then they'll just execute it. And Mayo talked about trust. And again, I always say business owners lay awake, worried about 3 things of a night time, 1 of 3 things, revenue, staff, and customers. At the moment, I think during this COVID-19, we're worried about all 3. But if you've got a really good pathway set and you set the performance expectations down, your team are doing their very, very best. And even if they're on reduced hours and they're still doing their very, very best, it is light at the end of the tunnel and motivating for a business owner or a manager to see that they understand their importance and commitment to the role. And the big thing during this COVID-19 is we definitely want people, businesses to retain their good employees. So if you're not giving them a direction and you're not following the pathway, showing the pathway, then you may lose them. And we're about to get into understanding more into the depth of performance. But I made a comment in our last webinar that I did last Wednesday night, and I made a comment about if you've got underperforming staff, and some staff are putting in, some staff are not, then that also could send some bad energy in your business, and you've got to be very mindful of that. So that's a good way to introduce you, Mayo, ways to address performance issues even remotely.
Yes, thank you, Colin. So part of the performance management process is what we call performance counselling and disciplinary action, which is what I'm covering off now. But part of that is keeping the staff engaged when we're working remotely. So before I get into it, I want to talk to you about, again, similar to what we've said or what I'm going to say, similar to what the previous slide was, but it's very important to stay connected. So what we found is small talk. And to me, small talk is sometimes, hi, how are you? How was your weekend? And talking about something that they found hilarious over the weekend, just so you actually make them feel as employees happy and positive in their work environment. Build connections with the staff and I guess with the leaders. It's really important that everybody cohesively together is that we're trying not to be feeling isolated or disorientated. Sometimes, like we said, Colin, you and I had a conversation just before, about banter, but it's about that connection of keeping together. Share the positive feedback and find a new norm, because right now, at the end of the day, this is the new norm. And it's going to change again and again and again until we come back to some sort of normality. But trying to focus and keep, like we say, we talk about going for walks or doing something random over the weekend and using that as a positive reinforcement conversation. Like Colin, you mentioned before about a virtual coffee, yeah, saying, hey, at 1 o'clock, or having lunch together, even saying at 1 o'clock, let's have lunch and let's video call. That's okay. Finding fun activities such as surveys or games. I know, Colin, you've been Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is one of your favourite games at the moment to play, and to question, I guess, staff on some of your products and services, which I thought was a great game for us. Also keeping some sort of routine, so making sure that staff have got their own of their new norm of routine and sticking to it. And then also celebrating successes and wins. So, it's about sharing that communication, whether it's through email or phone call or through the social media pathways, and then talking to staff about some sort of personal development or career paths. Like, you might be given that COVID situation, you've been able to be upskilled. That's a great option. Now, over the next couple of weeks, I'd love to get you to work on additional duties and tasks and still grow and develop from there. So that's really important to keeping them engaged.
I think that goes back to you getting into performance appraisals a bit soon, but that is like setting some goals and objectives of what you want to do, even during this COVID-19. I just want to point out, Mayor, there's nothing better than when we do our Zoom meetings of a morning and there's a round of applause for everyone for some of the achievements that they've done. And again, that's that connection that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now getting into the nitty-gritty of performance issues. So it's really important that doesn't matter where we are and what we're doing. If there are concerns as a manager or an employer that you find that we need to address, it's still okay to address during COVID-19 and remote learning and remote working. So it shouldn't be treated any differently. But what we need to do is identify new variables that can interfere with their work. So now, knowing, if we look through the previous slides, is that there is a bit of change that's happened with staff. So it's about whether it's got home factors, mental health factors, and all these situations that might interfere. You might have a kid next to you whilst you're working that actually might partially change of the way they're doing their work. But the quick question is, are they achieving their work? If they are, fantastic, and those variables haven't interfered with them. But it's more when it becomes a situation for them and they're not achieving their KPIs or their targets, or even on the direction and path that you're wanting them to do. It's really important to arrange regular catch-ups remotely, and as we mentioned, Colin, we like to catch up every second day, even, or every day. You and I sometimes catch up, but it's just more or less just how everything's going. For the managers and the employers out there that don't do it often enough, even once a week is a good start to ensure that we are having some catch-ups, talking about what's really working really well, and that way we can avoid some performance and conduct discussion. We also want to get to the bottom line of the potential issues and understand why they have changed. So think about, okay, in a situation with client X, perhaps client X was the one that actually is no longer in business and therefore it didn't help them achieve their targets. So what did we do as employers to actually support them with that particular client and help them find another client? That might be finding the solution to that problem, or work with them on finding out what's actually happened. And some of the potential issues may not actually be client related. So understanding why they're not achieving those performance and targets, and identify if the issue is due to the remote working situation. From then, we want you to continue to follow a performance counselling process. So the first option might be to have the informal conversation, so a verbal discussion, a phone catch-up, a Zoom catch-up, and then just working with them on how we can achieve better. And then we want to ensure the meeting is arranged in private settings. So what I mean by that, if we're having a Zoom catch-up or a phone catch-up, we don't want any disruption. So asking them to find a quiet space and have a chat.
I think, Maya, what's important is, we look at this, but I think, setting that pathway and, making sure those expectations are clear. And also, as a leader, saying to your team, if something's not working for you, please reach out. Now, there's two of our staff members, Sarah and Stephanie, who have got young kids. And when we do a Zoom meeting, sometimes they're in on the Zoom meetings with us, and that's just part of the family, right? But, if they're struggling, they're very good at reaching out, saying, listen, I'm struggling. I'm going to do this project you want me to do, or do this activity you want me to do. I'm going to do it, and give us the time. So I never once do I think that they're not going to do it, because they communicate well to me. I think it's really important that comes out, as part of your conversation, and an expectation of their performance as well. Because sometimes not knowing what they're doing, the unknown, to a business owner who is paying wages and wondering what they're doing, can drive them a little bit crazy as well, and affect their well-being too.
Thanks. So what I also talk about here when I talk about performance management in general, I never look at it as a negative light. So we always want to use that opportunity to help that staff member achieve success. So it's if they fail, it's almost like us as owners and managers fail. So working with the staff member to own the particular error or why they haven't achieved what we're asking them to achieve. Then it's about discussing ways to, what I call, fix it and find a solution with them. So having them talk to you about, okay, well, now we've identified these, either whether it's a conduct or a performance concern, what are we as employees going to do to try and sort out or improve going forward? And then as managers talking about, wonderful, okay, that's a great idea. So let's try that and let's look into it over the next couple of weeks. So it's really important to encourage them to help you. It's what I say, help them help you. Then it's important to make sure that we've done notes and set reminders to get things done. So whether it's we've sent them an email and we want to send them up a little reminder or a flag to say, hey, I'd like this done over the next couple of weeks, and also holding them accountable. It's really important that we do hold them accountable during this process. Making sure that sometimes the reason why they haven't achieved what they needed to achieve is because we haven't given them either the right setup or we haven't given them the tools or resources. But even if we have, and we want to make sure that, okay, we've done that, so what else can we do to reduce time, whether we're wasting companies' time, resources, money, etc., if we haven't done it? We also want to reduce the risk of potential workplace bullying, harassment, and it's really important to bring that up here, because through effective communication and regular communication, there wouldn't be these kind of questions or concerns about why we keep on either following up on to them about what they need to do. We also want to mitigate unhappy customers and customer complaints.
Well, I think sometimes what happens is if something goes wrong, and it's very hard, sometimes businesses are delivering stuff and it's done through remote staff, working remotely to try and get the outcome, and if things don't go right, then there's the blame game. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, so Maya, topic 3, you're doing very, very well. How to address staff who are underperforming or misconduct, because this is it's happening, still happening out there. So if you can take us through that'd be fantastic.
Yes. And I'll probably start with my quote where I say, if it's not written, it hasn't happened or it didn't happen. And it's really important to start off with that, because it's important to record essential information in the staff file or the HRIS. So as I mentioned in my previous slide, notes. Very important to take a note down of what's happening. Yes, it's an extra task for you, but however, it's more about the accountability and what to do in the event of, if we need to carry on and have another conversation. We also want to use it to help guide the employment decision and future actions. So from, say, for example, once we've recorded it and we bring it up in their performance review, we had an issue back then, but now it's improved vastly. Thanks for really working hard and so forth. But if they haven't, it's also about what do we do next? What is our next step and what do we need to do going forward? It's really important to provide evidence of performance and conduct issues. And I talk about making sure that there's time, dates, examples of what we were actually talking to the staff member about. And it also offers history. So if we wanted to look at it as a glance or as us as HR professionals, when a client's talking to us about some queries, we can actually say, yep, in the client file, we've noticed you've had X amount of conversations. Well, our recommendations for the next steps are. And it also protects the employer's interests, so making sure we've got the right information stored in their files. Now, the right conversations about staff performing. So always think about it. If something's happened, let's look at what's the turnaround time of the conversations that we have. And our encouragement is within that first few days of it happening is about having a conversation. You want to be upfront about why you're also having a meeting. When you're asking a staff member to attend a meeting or requesting them to attend a meeting, whether it's through an email, a phone call, or a letter, we want to explain that we would like to meet with you regarding any performance or conduct concerns and follow a process. To demonstrate also the compassion and the respect around it. So understanding when you are having that conversation, listen to them. And it's key, the key point is listening to that staff member when we're having that conversation. We also want to make sure that you don't make assumptions, because we might be working in the heat of the moment. So actually sitting through and again listening to their reactions, their thoughts, if it's through video, looking at their emotion. You also want to make sure that we're referring to the facts and examples. As I mentioned in my previous slides, give examples of time, date, and whether it was a customer example, a staffing example, or what the situation was. You want to make sure that you've got all your ICT or your technology up and running. So that means whether it's the Zoom, if we're doing the meeting through Zoom or Teams, making sure the staff members got the link to the meeting. And again, going to the meeting in a positive tone. Because if we start the meeting with a negative tone, the meeting is going to end up negative. If we start with a positive tone, we know that most of the time that the meeting will flow through smoother. And also give enough information and give them that opportunity to respond. It's really important to let them speak and hear them out.
I think, May, if someone's confused on what to do and stuff like that, then we're very open to giving some guidance on what to do in the business, and they can book a 15-minute chat with any one of our HR advisors to say, well, look, this is what's happened, and just do that check-in. I think it's worth that check-in first before you actually do something if you're a little bit unsure.
Yes, absolutely, Colin. I just want to touch on what the different misconduct or conduct issues are in a workplace. So when we talk about the general term of conduct or general misconduct, it talks about the conduct and behaviour issues or concerns that you might have, which generally fall in between of the code of conduct and the policies and procedures. So what aren't they doing right in accordance to the way you do your business? And important note to say, the unintentional harm to self and others, they might not actually understand that they're doing it. Where serious misconduct, on the other hand, is when it's actual deliberate behaviour. So we're looking at, it was an intended situation. They acted in a way because of, and that could be either if it's to risk your health and safety, whether it's putting the reputation of the business on the line. It's more the forceful nature. We might look at this, whether it's theft, whether it's, engaging in horseplay, which has gone over and above health and safety issues. There's a whole list of things that we could go through with that. Serious misconduct generally leads to dismissal. So it's what did it do to put the reputation of the business or financial losses of the business on the line.
One of the things I want to add, Maya, is, there's a lot of companies that are during this period of engaged you and Alison and Lily to help with running some policy workshops, even online, just to get everyone aligned with this is the way we want people to behave, and make sure that we're all following our code of conduct and policies and procedures. Even working remotely, I think it's been great. And we've just recently had a serious misconduct where a staff member in particular is bagging the company through social media because they're not happy with what's going on. But it's actually the company's just following the legislation of Victorian by our government. So it's just frustration. But to go and do that, it's serious misconduct in really pushing the brand down. So unfortunately, there are things like that that is happening out there in the marketplace. Over to you, Maya.
Yes, so the way to address staff with misconduct. So this is how I would follow most performance counselling sessions, is to making sure we're arranging a meeting virtually. So that's through your Zoom or your Teams or any other forms that you use, providing the staff member with 24 hours notice and offer them a support person. That's really important, to offer them a support person, and also in your letter to make sure that that's written in there. Also investigate the concerns prior to the meeting to have hard facts and evidence. Ask open-ended questions to obtain fair answers, not yes or no questions answers, because in turn, and sometimes switching the question around, having that same question but switching that around. Actually turn the session into a coaching dialogue. So that's more about what can we have done to prevent this situation from occurring in the future. Making sure that we leave, as managers and leaders, leaving the emotions out of the door. So going in with a clear thought process, and once we've listened to them, coming to some sort of a conclusion. Being consistent and holding staff accountable is really important after the conversation. So once we've said, okay, well, we're going to put you on a performance improvement plan, let's look about what we can do to hold you accountable and set expectations, and then come back and say, well, we'll catch up in a week's time or in a month's time and see how we're going from there. It's also really important to mention during your meeting that it's private and confidential, especially if they've got a support person present, and letting them know that you shouldn't be disclosing anything out of this particular group setting. And also, as I mentioned, give examples of positives that they can do to improve on.
Okay, next one's around how to give staff an official warning, Maya. So thank you.
Yes, so with warnings, so there's an informal, what I call verbal conversations that you have with staff. And now you can actually have quite a few verbal warnings, but where you really want to come into is once you've had once, twice, or a few times of an informal discussion, I would actually bring it up to a formal setting. Now, the differentiation between a formal, final, and a first and final warning, it generally goes it doesn't have to go in order, it goes based on the situation. And it's really important to, if you have a HR advisor like Alison or I or the team, to be able to talk to us about what do we think is the best fit. Generally speaking, from a formal written warning would be that it's after you've had multiple informal conversations, that it needs to be a formalised situation. And then you might go on to the final warning. But where the first and final warning comes into is if it's been a reoccurring situation and we've had multiple verbal conversations, and depending on the severity, that's when you would go to a first and final written warning. It's important that we are clear about the reasons for why we're giving the warnings and the detailed information about the warnings. We also want to, as I mentioned, set clear expectations going forward, whether that's through a performance improvement plan, an email, or any follow-ups, and consider to make sure that the decision that we're providing them after we've given them the time to think about it is fair and reasonable. So when we're giving a warning, we want to detail the performance or conduct issues. Like I mentioned, we want to put a plan and expectations in place, and we want to hold that person accountable. So have them come to you. Provide them coaching and honest feedback throughout that whole process, not just at that meeting. So as leaders and managers, we want to make sure that we're actually practicing what we want to preach, as well as holding that conversation and holding them to make sure with the accountability that we get that positive reinforcement at the end. We also want you to follow up and discuss the improvement. So whether check-in at week 1, then week 2, week 3, etc. Bring up the performance concerns and how they've improved or not improved during performance reviews. That's really important throughout those conversations to actually acknowledge that, and making sure that we are actually following the plan and we're sticking to that plan.
Oops, sorry.
Yep, that's okay. Understanding what's fair and justified. So when we're looking at mitigating any kind of unfair dismissal claims or general protections claim, regardless of what the situation is, we want to make sure that any process that we follow is fair and reasonable. And what we call that falls under procedural fairness. Allow the staff member to have a support person present and the consent to them being there. Providing the staff the opportunity to respond and stopping that meeting to consider that response. Outline the unsatisfactory conduct and performance, and then give them that chance to improve. If we don't give them a chance to improve and say, well, we're going to give you a performance improvement plan for 1 week and then decide to terminate their employment, well, that would be potentially considered as an unfair process. So giving that time to improve. A question, did we provide them with enough examples and how to improve or where they went wrong? If we didn't give them those we don't ask those questions, we're also setting ourselves up to fail. So we want to make sure that we've got those, we follow these processes that we outlined today to mitigate those situations. And give them more information about the decision. They may not agree with it, but it's something that we need to express and explain that we believe that the process was fair and reasonable, and we've set expectations going forward.
And look, Maya, you know, we've had some feedback, you know, in a previous webinar, like, we're in this pandemic, shouldn't you be a little bit more lenient on staff, and you know, because you know of what's going on, you know, and be a little bit more flexible. You know, what's your answer to that? I think you can be a little bit flexible within reason, but if people don't deliver on what the business needs, then yeah, you need to address it. But what's your view on that?
So I absolutely believe there's two sides of every story, right? So for me, it's, well, again, and that's why from feedback from our clients and everybody, I believe that there is sometimes a give and take, and understanding if you give your staff members absolutely everything to do their jobs and they're not following that, then I find that it's fair to have those conversations about underperforming, because we've set them up for success. And we've also caught up with them to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So my answer to that question is absolutely. I still believe we need to have these conversations.
And that takes it back to the you know, how to prevent an unfair dismissal or an adverse action claim. So I'll get you to take you through this topic 5. We've got some questions, and I know we're going a bit over time, but it's a very thorough webinar that we're doing, and it's very relevant. So yeah,
yep.
Take us through an unfair dismissal.
Yeah, so especially during COVID, you'll find that some businesses can actually go through this because of the perhaps maybe there wasn't enough clear information, or just quite a lot of unknowns. But we want to make sure that unfair dismissal doesn't happen. And should it actually happen, we want to make sure that if the termination was harsh or unjust or unreasonable, well, then that's a concern. So we want to make sure that we followed all the steps that I've outlined in today's webinar to mitigate as much as we can from that. And because we would have had records and our record keeping, we would have that information. So in that instance, it would be, well, if you haven't taken notes, there's an opportunity for an unfair dismissal, because we won't know all the ins and outs of what the situation is. But if we've been given the right information, that shouldn't occur. And it's also about, like I said, the procedural fairness. We need to make sure that we're following a fair and reasonable process to mitigate from happening. It's important to note that the staff have 21 days from the day that they were terminated, and that's calendar days and not business days. So we need to be mindful that once they're dismissed, obviously being mindful that that doesn't happen. There's two types of unfair dismissal. One is more about because you've lost your job or because some people might feel it's not genuine redundancy. And then there's unlawful termination.
And again, that's another minefield we can just keep going talking about, which I know you're going to highlight now. Thank you.
Yes. The other side of it is the adverse action claim. And this is when a staff member could be terminated because they raised a workplace right, whether it was a complaint, whether they're questioning about their pay or the job keeper or being part of a union. That's some examples that we've got. The other one might be about discrimination, whether it's about the race, the colour, the sex, and all those, I guess, discrimination laws that fall under it. The other one, again, is for demoting. So if we've said to, or we're underpaying someone and then they're raising a query, we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So an adverse action claim is more about them raising a query and which they might can put in. And that doesn't have a cap on the length of time that they can submit a claim. Or a person was hired due to discrimination. And one example I would use there is if someone was pregnant and they came into a job interview and you didn't hire them, that could potentially, even if they are employed or not employed with you, they can still put in an adverse action claim.
But it does make it worse when you say, I'm not hiring you because you're due to have a baby. You can't say that in an
Absolutely
interview.
not at all. So to prevent any repercussions from termination, as a summary of our conversation today, we encourage regular communication with employees on expectations of the business. We want to make sure that you're following a process and make sure you've got clear policies in place and procedures. Also have a valid reason for termination. Sometimes just saying, well, I don't like that person or I don't have enough work for them. Well, we need to look at how that termination plays a part. Be aware of your legislative requirements. So it's really important to understand that. And also having proof. So emails, examples, customer complaints, whatever the situation is, have that substantial proof. Also comply with the notice period requirements. I know as in small businesses, we probably don't know a lot of our obligations for that. So if we are terminating someone within probation, it generally is a week's notice and so forth. And again, document, if it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. So really having that in their staff file, whether it's through a HRIS or an actual paper file. And important with terminations, regardless of what the situation is, a resignation, a casual termination, or whatever it is, we want to make sure you have a letter confirming the dismissal or termination. And that in turn just finalises the employment relationship.
Lastly, you want to talk about the mental health tips for the workplace. I think is important. Yeah.
Yes, and one that we speak a lot about over the last couple of months is be mindful of what people are going through. Every situation is different. However, we're all here to do a job. We need to do the job effectively. But we want to make sure that we're providing support to staff and help them out with the situation. That actually might be through an EAP program, which is the Employee Assistance Program. Sometimes just a cup of coffee, or sometimes just an ear to hear what they've got to say. Check in on how they're performing and what they're doing is best for the business. And recognise their employees might be struggling with mental health or issues and then providing them with the support. And look at ways that we can reduce their stress. Sometimes being able to say, hey, look, it's okay, go take a 5-minute break or a 10-minute break and then come and refocus. And encourage your staff to speak openly about their mental health. There's nothing wrong with it in today's society, and it's one that's quite talked about in the world today. And then ask them to ask for support if they need it. I say, Colin, it's okay if you want to have a chat, I'm all ears and I can refer you to someone.
Yeah. Well, look, I think you did a very good webinar, Mayo, and this webinar could have been 3 hours, and we don't want to do that. We want to try and keep it as short, sweet, punchy as possible. But, you know, during this COVID-19, you know, and we're in stage 4 now, you know, we know that there's some companies out there that have done some wonderful things to grow their team, motivate them, and keep the business going. We also know on the other side, there's been you know, issues that have happened, and people have jumped too early or reacted too quickly, and things have been blown out of proportion. But I think it's important that, you know, if you're struggling a little bit, then you know, reach out, and you know, we're here to help as a business. And you know, we've got all these documents and checklists that we're providing clients to follow. If they don't understand them, they can give us a call or email us, or they can go and get support. And you know, not only do we have the resources, all the resources that are there for Safe Work Australia, there's downloads, there's COVID safe plans, but sometimes people just need a bit of an explanation. What does this mean? How does this work? What would you recommend here? And you know, that's where we're there to help. You know, if it's HR related, then definitely go and reach out to someone like yourself, May, or one of my people in the team. If you're struggling as a business owner or a manager, and you want that, you know, bit of moral support, or some, you know, what do I do? How do I trade out of this, or try and set a better pathway forward? Then give me a call. You know, we're here to help. That's what I want to put it out. We're here to help businesses that are going through this pandemic, and it's not easy. And you know, I can say, you know, one thing that people probably don't understand is when, you know, a business like ours, we actually ride the emotion with the actual business owner and staff of what they're going through, because of it hasn't been it's not been an easy ride for many businesses and many people. The current promotion we got at the moment, if you want to do a performance management workshop, or do a policy workshop with your team, I think is good. Then give us a call, and yeah, we're giving 10% off if you mention this webinar. Our next webinar is on the 14th of September at 1 o'clock, and how staff feedback can make or break your business. And I think this also links to the performance management side of things, because if you're getting good feedback from your staff, you don't act upon it, then you know, they might leave. So so this is what the webinar is all about. Please register. We hope you really enjoyed the webinar today. If you've got any questions, please reach out to us. But you know, we all want people to stay home to save lives. That's what we're all about. And you know, for those who live in Melbourne, we know that it's hasn't been easy, and we're trying our very best to make sure that we keep things positive. So thank you for attending this webinar. Really appreciate your time and attendance, and if we can be of some help or value to your business, then please reach out to us, because that's what we're here to do. Thanks a lot, and that concludes the webinar. Thank you very much, May. You've done a wonderful job as always, and very proud of you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.